to get started on this 1970 look at different genres, I'm going to start off with classic rock. There's a surprise. And I'm going to cover in this first one, I think I've got 5 albums to cover. So let's go through them. The first is probably, is the favourite album of that year I own, and it's called Layla and Assorted Love Songs by Derek and the Dominoes. Well, this double album was considered one of the best in Clapton's discography, as it captured the pain of Clapton's love for Pattie Boyd, who was his best friend's wife, best friend being George Harrison. I'm sure we all know that story. The music, well, the band wrapped themselves around those songs to deliver a solid sound that enriches rock, blues, and the emotional resonance of a drug-inspired era. The songs, well, difficult to pick out the ones because the whole set is remarkable, but I will choose a few. Of course, the iconic title track goes without saying. The tear-driven bell-bottom blues, which I adore. Clapton's version of Hendrix's Little Wing is outstanding. And then, of course, there's those blues covers. The immaculate Bill Broonzy's Key to the Highway. And then, of course, there's Tell the Truth. And the absolutely sublime Have You Ever Loved a Woman? So, whichever way you listen to it, this is a classic album and one that I think everybody should have in their collection, particularly if you like guitar-based stuff. I have got a short review of this particular album. It's about 6 minutes on my channel. There'll be a link below if you want to listen to me talk more about this. Finally, a word on the band. Carl Radal, sadly gone. Jim Gordon. Bobby Whitlock. I saw Bobby Whitlock on the YouTube. He's now got a channel where he's recollecting those magical years as a musician in the 70s, referring to Clapton, Stills and various others. Quite interesting. And then, of course, the legendary Duane Allman, sadly passed. He is an integral part of this classic album. And then, of course, there's Eric. Or is it Derek? Just wonderful. Second choice then on these classic rock albums, Fire and Water. This is Free's third album. Free, a British-based band. Possibly the most, well, it is the most commercial of their albums. And of course it came on the back of that huge hit, All Right Now, that seemed to be on the radio forever. It combines that driving rock with soulful guitar-laden ballads, guaranteeing an impressive set of songs. The 4 members are all at the top of their game, and the album was showcased at the infamous 1970 Isle of Wight Festival. I can still see the images. They came on in the afternoon, late afternoon, and they performed an absolutely out of the park set, and I loved it to death. I'll try and get a link to that on this video so you can go and watch it on YouTube. My personal favourites on this are the Stomping Mr. Big, which opens the album, and the second side, I think, and it's got some stunning bass and some real power chords from Kossoff. The organ-driven Heavy Load is a favourite, and the catchy title track with a great guitar riffs, and of course, I forgot that sing-along number. What's it called? All Right Now. Roger's throaty blues-style vocals are impressive, and I'd like to also tip my hat to Andy Fraser on bass, a terrific bass player, and we sadly lost him far too early. And of course, Paul Kossoff, who his guitar style was so unique, I felt at the time. And Unfortunately, after this album, the success of Free dwindled in ever quickening paces, and this was directly related, really, to Kosso's dive into the world of heroin addiction, and the spark slowly faded. But this was certainly a highlight. The third album I want to spend a few minutes talking about from this classic rock area in 1970 were a band called Family. They were from Leicester, and their third album, I think it was their third album, was called Anyway, and it was released in 1970. They released two albums in 1970. This was the first one, and recognised in rock circles as a very powerful rock band based around the guitar and vocal combinations of Charlie Whitney on guitar and Roger Chapman on vocals. But in addition, they added intricate keyboard arrangements, occasional horns, woodwind and strings, which generated their own distinctive sound. Anyway, the album was unique as it mixed live material with studio-based recordings, and the smorgasbord was indeed an intriguing mix. The first side, 4 songs, were live from a gig in Croydon, South London. And briefly, the opener, Good News, Bad News, highlighted Chapman's electrifying vocals and the band's heavy, powerful rock sound. And it was full of dynamism, and at 8 minutes, it really sounded more like an encore rather than the opening song to the set. The last track on that first side, Strange Band, was a minor hit in the UK, and it is indeed a powerful piece of work. So that impressively set you up for the second side, which was the studio tracks, where there were much more subtlety on show, and the sound was really a combination of the rock sound with those additional instruments that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to pick out 2 tracks that I think stand out. The first one was Norman's. It's has a delightful violin daubed with the delicate piano at the intro, and it sparkles into a rock ballad. And there's a lovely flute piece that joins the party at the outro. Very classically inspired rock, really. And then the finale, Lives and Ladies, is a tremendous blues. Chapman sort of daintily introduces on vocals with an acoustic guitar before a very slow rhythm starts, with Whitney starting to indulge himself on the fretboard way back in the mix, and the song develops such that the lead guitar, which is pretty impressive, becomes slightly louder, and the rhythm becomes slightly quicker as the song explores the what we love in the blues. And it really does hot up later on when Whitney's solos are superlative, to say the least. And he was an extremely talented musician, it has to be said. Chapman's gruff, wailing vocals also arrive midway through, and it's the finale to a very, very good, underrated album. Fourth offering, going to try and do this a bit quicker because it's getting lengthy as usual. Live at Leeds by The Who, in my opinion and the opinion of many, the best live album of all time. The energy, power and emotion are all captured at this small gig in Leeds, and it blows away the myth that The Who were a quirky pop band that made odd albums and angry singles. This live set followed the iconic Tommy, but it was a different animal entirely. The tracks, there's 3 cover versions on this that resonate the band's rock and roll roots. There's Young Man Blues by Mose Allison, Shaking All Over, written by Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, and the Eddie Cochran song, Summertime Blues. And what an amazing trio they were. And then, of course, we get the second side with the anthemic 15-minute My Generation with lots of Tommy extracts and Townsend absolutely tearing the guts out of his guitar. And then, of course, we have the comedic, druggy Magic Bus where Moon takes centre stage with that impish grin of his. And, of course, between them is the single Substitute. To say the band were in sync when this was recorded is an understatement. And they were loud, very loud. The playing really, particularly Moon's crazy drum style, was a fantastic thing to hear. Entwistle's bass, of course, very solid. Daltrey's impassionate singing, and then Pete's mesmerising guitar power chords and solos. What a collective piece of work this was. The last of this first combination of rock albums, classic rock albums, I want to talk about briefly is Wishbone Ash, their debut album, just called Wishbone Ash. Now, this band I seem to be seeing live virtually every month in 1970 and 71 and 72. In fact, they were one of my favourite bands. It was the guitar playing. I was a big guitar freak in those days, and they had twin lead guitars. They were a different sort of twin lead guitar to the Allman Brothers. They had a very British feel to them, but they were classy and they were very integrated, and I loved them. The rock and roll community, certainly on the university circuit, couldn't wait for them to turn up to play another gig. And they were very much a band, I think, that had tremendous potential and talent. But one thing they didn't have was a great rock singer. But let's get to the music. The opener's Blind Eye. It's got some crackling piano-driven rhythm, and the twin guitars emerge with that very tight rhythm and that interplay between the two guitarists, and they steal the show. In 1970, they, as I say, were a very sought-after band on the university circuit, but they did do some slower ballads, which were, again, vehicles for those moody guitar solos. The rest of the first side is not particularly memorable, but the second side is gorgeous. The first offering, Handy, is a bit of a different sort of song. It has a very chaotic bass solo leading to tasteful rhythms, and then the guitar solos feeding off each other. Beautifully played. It's got a sort of jazzy touch to it. And 5 minutes in, we haven't heard any vocals. Crucial, I think, to this band enjoyment. And then there's another bass solo that segues into the second, more rocky part. And the band, stripped of the vocal additions, just let loose with some spectacular tight play. Impeccable third part starts with the drums, and they batter you as it builds up steam. And then the vocals arrive for a jazzy influenced outro. So that then leads us on to that, as far as I see it, was the best album track here, because of the experimentation. But then we reached the final track, the infamous Phoenix. Now, for members who went to see this band live, Phoenix was always the final song that they delivered before the Scream for the Encores. And it really is a tour de force. It's very anthem-like, and it really is a beautiful piece of classic rock guitar. The early minutes show the two guitarists sort of showing off their wares and competing against each other. And then as the rhythm speeds up, it then becomes a very up-tempo rocker, and it really gets very, very lively and loud. A solid band, to be sure. And I listened to this album the other night, and the second side holds up extremely well. And yes, I loved hearing Phoenix, because it was always played at the end of the night when you'd had a few beers, so you were really ready for a bit of a bop. So anyway, that's the first part of my classic rock choices for 1970. I've got quite a few. There'll probably be 3 videos on the classic alone, and I think in total we could be looking at least 10 videos to cover all the genres. But please slot in the comments any albums from that year, 1970, that you'd like me to include.